But first this morning, at 25, Amy Hamilton had her whole life ahead of her when she was suddenly diagnosed with cervical cancer. Amy hadn't had a smear test for years.
Fortunately, Amy survived, but only after having a hysterectomy to beat the disease. She says she is still astounded at how infrequently women go for smear tests.
To be honest, I hadn't had a smear test in probably about 2 years. I don't think that it was more that I was avoiding them. I just didn't understand why women had them done and the necessity, and there's nobody really that you ask the question of what a smear test is for. People just assume that you understand and know what it is, and I think I just didn't really understand, and it's an easier thing to put off than do. I didn't even know what cervical cancer was. I had never heard of it before, and most people are familiar with breast cancers and the commonly known ones, but I hadn't heard of it before. I didn't know what it was, and obviously it was a shock to know that at my age I could have cancer, because it's obviously something that you usually associate with being older.
Yeah.
And you take for granted that things like that would never happen to you at any age, forget about it at a younger age. So it was a huge shock, yeah. It's one of those things that you don't discuss on, I think, well, because it's obviously it's a woman issue and we prefer not to discuss them, but I'm hoping that people do start to become a little bit more open and about it, because it's obviously something that we need to deal with in this country. We have one of the highest rates of cervical cancer in Europe, in Ireland, because our screening process is maybe slightly at an older age, and it's something that we need to start discussing and dealing with, and just to be cautious.
And Amy joins us on the morning show. So, a very good morning to you, Amy.
Thank you. Good morning.
Many thanks for coming on. You mentioned Jade Goody there at the top of the piece on the tape, and it's funny, I remember when she passed away, the issue of cervical cancer was really brought to the fore, and I think she encouraged numerous women to go for smear tests who wouldn't otherwise. But since then the years have passed, and it's kind of fallen out of the limelight again, and that's why you're on with us this morning, because you're proof that it can happen to any woman at any age, and for you it was nearly 4 years ago when you were 25 you discovered a problem. How did you first notice that something was amiss or wrong?
Well, in 2008 I had irregular bleeding during intercourse, which for me had never happened before. So when that happened, I felt there was something I needed to go straight to the doctor about. So I went to my GP, and he then had questioned when I had my last smear test done, and I think it had probably been a couple of years. I had not really been very good at getting them done. So then he sent me on to the Beacon to see a specialist, Dr. Ayres, to do another follow-up test just to check, what had come up on because the smear is obviously abnormal. And then when they did a colonoscopy, to check it out, and then they realised that there was actually something there that wasn't right. And at that stage, I was diagnosed with cancer, cervical cancer. Yeah.
And that came as a real shock to you, because at 25 you don't expect to hear those words.
Yeah, I think we all associate cancer with being older, and of course nobody thinks it's ever going to happen to them. It's nearly like with sun cream. We all feel we don't need to put sun cream on. Skin cancer is going to happen to someone who's old, and never them. So I think, I just didn't expect it was going to ever happen to me, and also I didn't really understand or know of cervical cancer. It was a new thing to me.
The kind of cancer you had was aggressive, and we've heard so much conversation, so much debate over the last while about the HPV vaccine. Yeah. Even in this case, that wouldn't have helped you.
No, that wouldn't have helped, but I think at the same time the HPV vaccine seems to...
It's a preventative measure.
For a lot of, most of them. I think the specific type that I have is one of the more rare ones. So if I had it done, yes, it wouldn't necessarily have been preventative, but it would have prevented another stage of the same kind of cancer. So I think it is still a really great vaccine to have access to.
How serious did he say it was? What stage was it at when they caught it? Did he know how long you'd had it for? And
I'm sure he told me, but I don't remember those details. Maybe I've blocked them out. But it was, I think they said they probably had it for about a year.
Okay.
And it was at an aggressive enough stage. It had gone into my lymph nodes. So it had spread quite a bit, and it was at a stage that surgery was the option, as opposed to there wasn't an option of just doing treatment.
Okay. So how soon did that happen?
Because we had the test done and I'd had the test on the beacon, it takes a while for your body to heal before they can do any more. So toing and froing with specialists trying to work out what was the better option, because obviously my family and myself wanted to see was there any options rather than having a hysterectomy.
And of course, in the circumstance, you're better off getting as many options as you can. And getting as many opinions as you can.
And not that we doubted the opinions that we're getting, but just probably maybe to broaden our knowledge a bit more. So it was maybe 3 months before I actually ended up having surgery, which was a long time to be hanging around and not able to do very much while waiting.
Also time you needed to probably get your head around the fact that you're going to be having a hysterectomy at such a young age. I'm sure so many things must have gone through your mind about children and, you know, relationships and life after.
It's funny though, because I think at the time I was so in my own world that the actual having hysterectomy wasn't such an issue for me. It was more trying to deal with the fact that I had cancer. So it's more after the time, and now coming to terms with the fact that I had a hysterectomy is more of a time to deal with it, because I'm obviously getting a bit older and would be considering having kids down the line. So at the time, for me, my priority was, you know, do whatever it takes to
keep you alive.
To get the cancer out.
Yeah.
So, obviously it's a big thing to have had a hysterectomy, but it was, now looking back and seeing, it was the better of the options, which if it had been more aggressive, I would have had to go through treatment as well, which might have made other things difficult as well. So, and luckily they were able to keep my ovaries, so I still ovulate, so I still produce eggs. So if I wanted to have a surrogate down the line, I can consider that.
Okay. The surgery took place.
Yep.
And was there a long recovery? Did any treatment follow?
I was in the Mater Private for about a week, and then I just spent a lot of time resting. So luckily for me, the operation had gone very well, and they were able to just take it out within the one operation. So it just was recuperation time after home, and then I spent a lot of time just getting checkups. So that was pretty lucky. I didn't need to get any chemotherapy or radiation. Yeah.
Thankfully. But of course there's the follow-on, because you describe that time as almost like a blur when you look back on it, and now you look back on it with a little more clarity.
Yeah.
What follows though is the sudden realization that you were dealing with a life-threatening illness, and you had to deal with, and you had to get some counselling to help you through that.
Yes.
Did you find it difficult to talk to family and friends?
Well, no, because I'm lucky. I'm from a very big, close family where we're all very open, and my family were hugely supportive. They came to every doctor's meeting, all 6 of us piled into the room and all looked at the doctor and asked every question we could ask. So for me, that was great. But then afterwards, after the surgery, and as I started to come to terms with, I guess, my head was getting sorted out as to what had happened, I started to go to counselling myself in the ARC Cancer Support. have great counselling facilities there, which for me, it took a while to work out that I needed to go to counselling, but maybe it was 6 months, 8 months after my operation that I realised that actually something clicked, and I thought, you know, there's someone I need to talk to about these things. I'd spoken to my friends at length about things, and everybody was very, very supportive, and every question could have been answered and asked, but I think I maybe needed to go and speak to somebody else who could point out maybe different things that I hadn't realised.
What was the main issue that you were grappling with afterwards? Was it a why me, or was it I'm not going to, you know, I've had a hysterectomy, or why did I get cervical cancer, or why did it happen so young, or?
Well, obviously there's the why me, and that's, I guess, every cancer patient has the exact same question, and there's not really an answer. So I think maybe that was part of it, but more trying to deal with the shock stage. I'd been in shock probably for so long, and in a little spaced out world of, I was involved in everything, but maybe a little bit dazed as to what was going on. So it was just to talk about those things, and also to talk about the fact that I found it mainly so strange that I could have had cancer for a year, and how did I not notice, or how did I know the symptoms, or how was I supposed to find out? Was there something that I should have seen but didn't notice? Or
well, at the crux of it is you didn't have a smear test. And that's, had you had one, it would have been noticed. And what you've discovered in the years that have followed is, again, this infrequency for women to sit down and discuss this.
Yeah, and I think it's part of our nation. We are really quite bad at dealing with things that come up, and especially the female Irish people seem to be terrible about getting a smear test done. The cervical check that's come in, I find, is great. It's come in now, and I get checkups every 6 months, and it's free and it's there, and the piece of paper comes in to remind you to do it, so you're likely to do it. And I think that's a really great system that they've brought in, but it just seems to be this unanswered question for everybody as to what age we should start to get our smear tests, and every GP in Ireland seems to have a different opinion, whether it's once you're sexually active, maybe you're 25, and I think it just gives women an easier option to not get a smear test done, because nobody can tell them when they should actually get it done. So we put it off, and
even your friends put it off to this day, after what happened to you.
Yeah, and like I've said to all my girlfriends, you know, after this everybody had gone and got their smear test done, and everyone contacted me, friends and friends of friends said, we heard your story and we got a smear test, and that is amazing. But I've said to friends and family recently, you still getting your yearly smear tests? And they've said, oh yeah, well no, or a majority of them have, but I'm amazed people who just slip back into the, oh, I haven't got around,
it's putting it on the long finger, because it's not pleasant really to do it, and it's not something you talk about with your girlfriends really. To be honest, it's something you put on, Martin, you wouldn't understand, unfortunately.
Well, I know you say that I wouldn't understand, but guys are the same when it comes to, say, getting prostate checks. So there is some kind of conversation that we can have that will marry the two in some respects, because men are reluctant to talk about that, women are reluctant to talk about this. Have you become like the smear test policewoman?
Well, I like to think that maybe people would be considering, and even if one person goes out and gets a smear test, it's great. Someone else is making an effort to just be extra cautious. Ireland happens to be one of the largest cervical cancers in the whole of Europe, even though it's only 2% of female cancers in Ireland, but it happens to be mainly women from the age of 25 to 29 who are most likely to get cervical cancer. And with the screening test coming in that people should maybe start at 25, it
could be too late.
It could be too late, and every holiday girls go on, they go and get a bikini wax. It's uncomfortable, it's embarrassing, and a smear test is as uncomfortable but shorter, and
it could save your life.
Yeah. Exactly. It could save your life. Yeah.
Well, it's Cervical Cancer Awareness Week, so many thanks for coming on and highlighting this issue, and hopefully, as you say, we'll persuade some people out there to go get a check and to indeed save their life as well. Many thanks, Amy, for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
After the break, eating al desco. We'll show you cheap and easy recipes for eating at work.